So we talked about the first law, first equation we had used yesterday. Okay. So did you try the assignment I gave?
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes, sir.
so what do you found? You could find the equality. We had our target was to find that this is equal to divergence of electric field integrated over the volume. And what was our electric field for a point charge? It is equal to this lower bar I use as to denote a vector. If I put a bar below some letter, it means it is a vector. So you have got scalars, vectors, tensors. So you'll come to know. Has anyone started looking at my lectures? YouTube lectures?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you will see all those notations there. I have explained that Einstein's notation. So here again I will do a little bit, but I'll expect you people to go through those videos. Now, how do you find divergence of this electric field? So what is this ER? ER is the radial. So can you tell me what is this ER?
Sir, outward radial vector.
Yes.
Yeah. Suppose you have a point XYZ. Then what is this ER? How will you?
The basis vector.
So can you say it is XYZ upon the magnitude? Is it all right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So this is the origin. From the origin, your charge is at the origin. So outward radial vector is this. This is a unit vector. So I have to divide by the magnitude. So what is my electric field? This Q is a scalar quantity. ER I will replace with this. So X, Y, Z. And this is what is R square? So this the entire thing becomes R3 by 2. Is it all right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Something is wrong. 5 by 2. Hello? Yes?
Very good morning, sir. Vivek Bhaskar. Namaskar, sir.
So this is all right? Any problem? How will you find that? You have to find divergence of electric field. So what is that divergence of electric field? Del by del x of Ex. All right. So let's see what is your Ex. Ex is, you call it some constant K. Then you have to take derivative of del by del x of x upon so you are having already r square. All right.
Yes, sir.
Something is missing. It was r square. So r square is x plus. Okay, so this is fine. So you want to find this derivative. How will you find?
So we'll take a y and z as constant and with respect to x.
Yeah, so some effort is required.
Sir, we will replace x square plus y square plus z square by a constant
Yes, sir.
t.
Okay, let me do some hard work. So I need del by del x of x by, it was r square into, so it is r pi by 2. So you will say it is 1 upon r5 by 2 minus x upon, now you have to take the derivative of r minus 5 by 2. R minus 5 by 2 minus 1. Then you have to multiply with del r by del x. And this becomes r minus 7 by 2. What is del r by del x? R is r square is x square plus y square plus z square. So 2r del r by del x is equal to 2x, implies del r by del x is equal to x by r into x by r. I don't know. Have you got book by Griffith? Electrodynamics by Griffith.
No, sir.
Yes, sir.
So he does it properly. Let us see. Suppose I don't mind struggling for 5 minutes. So this becomes this. So what do I get? X square by r. So minus 1 minus 9 by 2. Similarly, you'll have these other terms. So your divergence of electric field will become K is outside. Then r minus 5 by 2 minus r minus 9 by 2 into x square. Then you need derivative with y. So what you will get? I think you will get again the same terms, 3. And here you will have, this is what I hope. So what do you get? K into 3r minus 5 by 2 minus, this is r square. So minus 9 by 2 plus 2. So minus 5 by 2 again. So if you look at Griffith, he has done it properly. So you get K into 2 r minus 5 by 2. Now we have to see if there is some mess in what I have done. So what we expected, E dot n ds integral is equal to divergence of E so this term divergence was this 2k r minus 5 by 2. This is the volume. Now you see this is a function of, so if you take a shell, spherical shell, you get 4 pi r square dr. So that becomes the volume of the spherical shell. Then you have to integrate from 0 to r. Now there is one issue here. Since this electric field is going to infinity at r is equal to tending to 0. So what happens? So here there is a singularity. So you have to subtract out the singularity. So you have got two surfaces now. One is this outer surface, and another is this inner surface. So this volume integral is sum of your surface integrals. So you have to include outer surface plus this small inner surface. Call it, okay, let's call it del S prime. Okay. Divergence of electric field. So basically my aim is to show you this divergence theorem. I am not after showing you laws of electrodynamics. Now you have to integrate this excess stuff. Okay, I don't mind doing it. R minus 5 by 2 plus 2, what do you get? Minus 1 by 2. Now you have to integrate this r minus half. So what do you get? R half divided by minus half. You take the limit from 0 to r. So you'll get some answer. And then here you have to do E dot n ds. From the outer surface you are getting E, whatever is there at that. We had calculated this value earlier. So what is the electric field at the outer surface? 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught q by r square. You multiply by 4 pi r square. So this is one term you get. So we said it was q by epsilon naught. Now what is the other term? It is coming from this limiting sphere of 0 radius. So what is the electric field there? 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught q upon this radius is of epsilon square. Let's call it a small radius epsilon into what is the surface area? 4 pi epsilon square. So as a limiting value, what do you get? Q upon epsilon naught. So basically one is plus, another is minus. So you will get a 0 value. So you have to check out. I am not recalling things properly. If you look at Griffith, he has done it nicely. Okay, so when you have a singularity, then you have to subtract out that similarity, and then you get two surfaces, one outer, one inner, and you have to take area integral on both of them, and that will be equal to your volume integral. Okay. Then one thing was, so we talked about divergence theorem. You know what is curl of a vector?
Cross product of the derivative with the vector.
So it is defined as del cross vector. So what is the meaning of this?
So like we can judge the rotational and
Then there is also a theorem on curl. What is done is, if you find v dot some contour integral, you are going along this contour, and you are evaluating the line integral of this vector v. So you have a closed contour. Then what is this equal to? It is equal to curl of this vector v dot normal vector into ds. So ds is this area. So over this area S. Now let us see if we take some. Now we take the electric field. So what was our electric field here? 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught q by r square ER. So if you find curl of this, this is also called circulation. So this is your ER. And what is this d gamma? This is your E theta. You have taken a circular contour. So what you will get if you take this dot product? So ER dot E theta, since this is 90 degree, ER dot E theta is 0. So you will get a 0 circulation. So the left hand side becomes 0. Any doubts? So what does this mean? Del cross of E is 0. If left hand side is 0, then right hand side has to be 0. You can take any amount, any size. You can keep reducing the size of this contour. So you will say that this term has to be 0. Only then left hand side can be 0 for this particular electric field. So curl of this electric field is 0. So what is the importance of curl for us? So curl can also be taken as, now you see curl is a vector. So what is usually done is, how you interpret it. So you take some directions x, y, z. So you take this plane yz. So in this yz plane, you take a area. So what is the area normal to this circle in the YZ plane? Anybody? If I take a circle in the YZ plane, what is its area normal? It is in X direction.
Sir, X direction.
Yeah. So
Yes.
you find circulation on this. You find the line integral over this. Divide by area of this. Basically, what happens? You take this integral. So n becomes 1. N is 1, 0, 0. You find circulation. You find the line integral here. Whatever is the circulation divided by area of this circle. What will it give the value? It will give you the value of this curve. Can you see?
Yes, sir.
So you get a component of the curl in X direction by assuming a circle, by assuming an area, an infinitesimal area, having normal vector in X direction. Similarly, you take a circle, in XZ plane. Now your normal vector is in Y direction. You find circulation of your vector field, divide by this area, and you will get a component in Y direction. So that's where you get 3 components of a curve. You have to take 3 different areas having normal vector in X, Y, and Z directions. So those contours are lying in those planes, X, Y, Y, Z, or XZ planes. And then you find circulation on that contour and then divide by that area. It's a limiting process. And you get the curl at a point. Is it okay? So curl you can define at every point in the field, in the space. So just I wanted to introduce you these 2 theorems. So this is known as Stokes theorem. You go and revise Green's theorem and Stokes theorem. So this is known as divergence theorem. Okay. So I'll now ask you one. Now we get back to fluid mechanics. So one is known as macroscopic, and another is the term is microscopic. So what do you understand by these 2? Yes.
The macroscopic is basically which can be perceived and like it is a continuous matter. Like it is something which we can perceive like in dynamically, and whereas microscopic is something which needs assistance.
Anybody? Anyone else?
Yeah.
Microscopic is when we see a system at large, and microscopic is when we zoom in and in depth, like particle to particle analysis. That's microscopic.
Can you describe some macroscopic property and microscopic property?
So macroscopic like mass, volume.
Like pressure, temperature, and volume. Their viscosity. There's some macroscopic property.
Microscopic?
Sir, kinetic energy of particles.
Yes.
Sir, molality.
So atomic, sir, anything which happens at atomic level.
Okay. So you need to look further into it. So in microscopic description, you are talking of like atomistic vibrations. So you're looking at atomistic scale. You see internal energy. Internal energy is a microscopic property or macroscopic?
Microscopic.
Sir, microscopic.
Microscope.
Macroscopic.
So how do you measure in microscope this internal energy?
So
Sir,
the force between two particles.
it is sum of all the energies of the particles,
So in
like
that system, like
rotational, kinetic.
Okay. Yeah, I also have to check it out. Okay. So one thing is like surface energy. You see, if you just look at a surface, you have interactive potential, interaction potential between atoms. And if you measure that, sum up that interaction potential and divide by the number of atoms involved, it is a microscopic property. If you want to just see at the surface energy is also called microscopic property. So you are going into calculation at atomic scale. Similarly, microscopic motion. What is microscopic motion?
So Brownian motion.
Okay. So thermal motion is microscopic motion. So particles are randomly moving around those atoms and molecules. So what is macroscopic motion? So in macroscopic motion, you see clumps of material moving around. So you're not worried about the thermal motion, the thermal agitation. You are worried about large number of molecules or atoms going around.
so basically like classical mechanics, what we deal is.
So classical mechanics is like particle mechanics. So there you can talk of following individual atom.
Yes.
Okay. Then you have rigid body mechanics. Then you say interparticle distance cannot be changed. So here something between statistical mechanics. Now what is thermodynamics? That is my another question. Why do you need thermodynamics?
So it is basically the branch of science which basically helps us to analyze the thermal gradient and how the temperature flow basically takes place in that
So
system.
why do you need thermodynamics?
To assess the behavior of the particle under the subjection of temperature.
Okay, suppose you take matter. Matter is basically discrete. You take a small amount of matter, it will have billions of atoms. Now, if you want to write equations of motion for each atom, then you will have very large number of degrees of freedom. So you go for a macroscopic description. You say you don't talk of a material. What is a material particle? It consists of average behavior of some 1,000 atoms. So you're not chasing individual atom. You are talking of some aggregate of atoms which behave in a similar fashion. So what is happening when you are doing macroscopic description? You are losing the microscopic description. You are losing the fine details. You are working on a coarser picture. You don't bother about what individual atom is doing. So you reduce your degrees of freedom. You don't want to solve billions of equations. You do an averaging process. Now, what happens in this averaging process? You lose out some information. You lose out information on dissipation at those small scales, whatever energy that may be getting dissipated. So, to cover that, to make a bridge between the actual microscopic world of atoms and the macroscopic idealization, or your continuum idealization. You need a bridge that supplies you that missing information, tries to supply you. So that is the thermodynamics. So you call heat generated. So that is all because of those dissipations. You find actual processes are all conservative. You see, whatever is happening at atomistic scale is conservative. But when you club things together, you are losing information, and then you try to provide that filler. How to explain the loss of energy? If you follow individual atom, the whatever is the work done or forces involved, that will be a complete description. But when you go to continuum scale, you are losing that information, and somewhere you have to explain the deficit. So that is where thermodynamics comes to help you. Okay. So when we are talking of fluid mechanics, we'll be talking of macroscopic description of flow. We are not doing the microscopic description. Is it all right?
Yes, sir.
And how do you define state of a fluid? So you need the velocity. So velocity components are three. We call UVW. Then you need two thermodynamic properties. You can take pressure, density. So two independent thermodynamic properties. And then you have an equation of state. So you can find other thermodynamic properties in terms of these two properties. So these five properties define the state of a fluid. So earlier you used to study state of an ideal gas. How many properties were needed?
Four.
So you needed two properties only. Because we are not talking of the macroscopic motion. Okay. For an ideal gas, you used to talk of two properties. Pressure, temperature, pressure, volume. Others can be found in terms of them. You could find internal energy, enthalpy, entropy. Okay. Now there is one more thing there. There is something called Lagrangian description. These things you will encounter in another is Eulerian description. So this is also known as spatial description. This is also known as material description. So what is the difference between these two? Suppose you have a particle. If you tell its position, its velocity as a function of time, so you are talking of a Lagrangian description. Suppose you have a solid. You apply forces to it. It goes around or it deforms. So you can talk how each particle move to another position. But if you have a liquid, then you are in trouble. You see, solid is well defined. It is occupying certain position. Now you have a pipe flow. So there, you cannot be chasing each particle here. Okay, continuous flow is there. So what do you talk? You talk of some control volume. You say if particle is here, it is having this velocity. So you are giving description which is Eulerian or spatial. So you give velocity as a function of x, y, z time. So you're not giving to a particle. Here you are giving to a particle. What is its velocity? What is its position? So velocity is given here at a point in space. Here you are giving velocity of the particle. So do you understand the difference now?
Yes, sir.
Now, if you want to find acceleration, how will you find acceleration? If I say velocity of the particle is given by this as a function of time, this is the velocity of a particle. So what will be its acceleration? Del v by del t.
Del v by del t.
So velocity is you can give velocity description in a field form. So a particle is at position x, y, z. So what will be the acceleration? Of that particle. Okay, at that position. So it is particle description. You have given particle description of the velocity. Particle may be having this position. But suppose you are giving spatial description of velocity. You say particle is at this position, certain velocity is there. Particle is at this position, particle travels from here to here. So here it was x, y, z, t. Now where will it be after time delta t? If I say x plus u suppose this velocity is nothing but uvw. Do you agree? At time t plus delta t, this is the position. Earlier it was this. Can you see it?
Yes,
Look,
sir.
moving with velocity v. V is nothing but uvw. So component x component will change by u delta t. Y component will change by v delta t. Z component will change by w delta t. So this is the new position. So if we have to find velocity of the particle, we represent it by dv by dt. Once we say dv by dt, while you are given a spatial field, spatial field means you are given velocity description in terms of position in space. You are not following the particle. Now it is called material derivative. You want velocity of a particle only, while the field is given spatial. Because Newton's laws apply to a particle. You have to find acceleration of a particle. So you have a fluid, you catch hold of a particle, it goes around. You have to find its acceleration. And what you are given is spatial description of velocity. So how do you find it? You see velocity is a function of x, y, z, t. So you can write del v by del t. You see, I'm just using Taylor's theorem. It's a function of x, y, z, t. So derivative with time. derivative with position, and whatever is the distance traveled. It goes from here to here. You know dx, dy, dz. Change in x, you have to find the gradient and multiply. Is it all right?
Yes.
Has anyone read Feynman's lectures in physics? If you have got them, he has written there are 3 chapters on fluid. You can look at them.
Okay, sir.
So material derivative. Now what is your dx? U delta t. Okay. So what do you get? Del V by del T plus so you can write it as gradient of V this if you just look at these 3 fellows, they are like gradient of V.
Yes.
Dot dx dy dz. Dx dy dz is nothing but u v w, and there is a delta t. So what I have done, this is like my delta v. What is my delta v? Del v by del t into delta t plus these terms. What is your fx plus h? Fx plus h f prime x. If you have got multi-variables, y plus k. Okay. So this is for 2 variables. So what is your delta f? H fx plus k fy. Same thing is happening. This is your delta v. Otherwise, you cannot multiply with dx, dy, dz. So you divide by delta t on both sides. So this is what you will get. I just multiply by delta t. So delta t here it will go away. Here this delta t will be knocked out. You just look at it yourself. So what do you get? dv by dt is equal to delta v by delta t plus gradient of v. Now this is gone, so you get this is nothing but vector v. UVW is nothing but vector v. So you're multiplying gradient of v with v. Now let us see what is the meaning of gradient of v. So we are finding a gradient of a vector. So I'll just Write a matrix. So this could have been also written as Vi comma j. What do you do in gradient? You take a derivative. Comma here represents derivative. If you go through my lectures, which I have uploaded in YouTube, all this is explained. So this is Einstein's notation. He used this notation to write in a shorthand. So suppose I just take I takes value 1 to 3, j takes value 1 to 3. 1 to 3 is xyz basically. So if you write in this notation, what you will get? Delta V1 by delta X1. Delta V1 by delta X2. Delta V1 by delta X3. Delta V2 by delta X1. Delta V2 by... Can you see both the matrices are same? V1 is basically U, V2 is V, V3 is W, X1 is X, X2 is Y, X3 is Z. So just this kind of a notation makes your life easy. You can express this equation, this matrix as Vi comma j. That is the advantage. It is called gradient of V. So if you take, I ask you a simple question. If you have a scalar function, can you describe a scalar function? Y is equal to fx, for example. Here you have an x coordinate and you get some function value. What is the derivative? Is it a scalar or a vector? It's a scalar.
Yes.
Scalar, sir.
Now suppose I give you pressure field. Pressure is a scalar quantity.
Yes, sir.
If I want you to find its gradient, what do you get? You get a scalar or a vector? You get a vector. So what has happened? You are finding its derivative. So what you are finding? Del by del x, del by del y, del by del z. So what happened? You have found its derivative with respect to a vector r. What is a vector r? X, y, z. R is nothing but x, y, z coordinate. This is the position vector of the point x, y, z. So when you take derivative of a scalar with a vector, what do you get? Vector. So I took derivative of a scalar with a vector. I got a vector as answer. If I take derivative of a vector with a vector, I will get a matrix, just like I showed you. So what I got was a tensor of order 2. Vector is a tensor of order 1. Scalar is a tensor of order 0. So if you go through my lectures, all these things is already taught. I taught all this in mechanics of solids course. So you look at that. So it makes your life easy. Everything becomes shorthand. That is the basic idea. So you look at it. I'll again come to this acceleration, what I derived. So class is over for today. Any problems?
No, sir, it's fine.
So I will upload the video. Okay, recording I will upload. So if you wish to look at it, you can do. Okay, class is over.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.